girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a judge declared a
Welcome, alternates, to day 26 of the Karen Reed retrial. I am Tab, your host, and tomorrow I'll be your host again. And then Margot will be back with you for the following 3 days as I am going to CrimeCon UK. So if you are in the London area this weekend and you want to meet me, come and say hi at CrimeCon London. I'm real excited, so I hope to see you there. Yesterday's proceedings were packed. So much happened with just 2 witnesses, but a lot of that was outside the jury presence. So I'm going to give you a little hint, but we are going to break down all of this craziness that happened on our Patreon, and you can find that at patreon.com/thealternate. But let's talk about what the jury did here. Dr. Marie Russell was back on the stand to complete her testimony. She continued to defend her opinion that John O'Keefe was bitten by a dog and not in a car accident. Brennan resumed his cross-examination, focusing on really undermining her and her credibility, and she did not like this. At all. She got pretty frustrated with Brennan, and Brennan really went on and on and on with the same exact question over and over, and Dr. Russell was getting frustrated. Me, as a viewer, I was also getting frustrated because Dr. Russell is pretty credible. I mean, her pedigree is stacked. Girlfriend is loaded with like her resume. I would never want to go up against her. Okay. And Brennan asking these questions when he himself put on a guy that didn't even have a bachelor's degree and lied about it. What the heck? Okay. Enough, Brennan, enough. And she is like, I am the expert in dog bites. I'm sorry. What do you want me to say? That is who I am. He did get her tripped up at one point when he noticed that she asked for a report. He had brought up something that came up in the last trial, and she said, "Can I see the report?" And that triggered Brennan, and he said, "Oh, you didn't ask for reports yesterday. Did somebody tell you that you should be asking for reports and to remind you of your memory?" And she said, yes. She hesitated, and then she said, "Well, yes, Alessi told me." And he was like, "Excuse me, Alessi told you when?" And she said, "Well, yesterday." And then she got tripped up and she was like, "No, I guess it was today in the car on the way to court." And Brennan was pretty PO'd about it and reminded the court and Dr. Russell that she had been sequestered and was not allowed to talk to anybody about the case at all. Zero, not even the attorneys. And so she did defend herself there and said, "Listen, that was the only thing that was brought up regarding the case. Everything else we talked about was just, plain and simple things I liked Boston and I liked New York and what I ate for dinner last night, nothing regarding the case." And she pretty much held her own because he asked her, 5 different ways to Sunday, "Are you sure? Because how did this get brought up?" "Oh, this just gets brought up in the middle of what you had for dinner." But she really did. She kept strong and said, "Yeah, that's it. There's nothing else mentioned." Oh, and one more thing. He did ask, "Did you know that this is you are not allowed to do this?" And she said, no, she didn't know that she wasn't allowed to have that one piece of information from the attorney. And honestly, I don't know if she wasn't allowed that either. Is it really advice. I guess it could be coaching or considered coaching. So it probably is frowned upon. I don't know if Judge Cannoni would actually reprimand the defense for that. Cross then continued with Brennan repeatedly asking Dr. Russell how she could definitively tell the injuries were dog bites. Like, he wanted 100% certainty. And again, she was like, we do not ever say anything with 100% certainty. And which is funny because the next point he brought up was DNA. And even DNA, they don't even say with 100% certainty. You know, they say something like, it's 1 in, 5 billion chance or something like that. But there's never and we all know it's 100% certain, but it's not even said, even when we know, if you find your DNA somewhere, it's you. But, so, Dr. Russell, it's not 100%. And so it's funny that next thing they led into DNA on the sweatshirt. Now, this made the entire courtroom chaos, okay? Defense was immediately, as soon as he said, "Are you aware that of DNA, if there was any DNA on the sweatshirt?" Defense objection. I mean, mad. They say, "We need a sidebar immediately. And so they go into the sidebar and you can tell that something's going down. Judge says, we are going to take a recess right now so I can discuss this with the attorneys, and I'm going to need about 30 minutes. So the judge then lets the jury out of the courtroom, and this is when we have a pretty heated argument about this DNA, because the prosecution never said anything about the DNA in their whole case. We never heard about this DNA until right now. And so defense is like, we want a mistrial. Ultimately, the mistrial was denied. And after about an hour, actually, then they came back and we just started off where we left off. So the jury actually, and this is what I was going to say, the jury never heard that. So let's just say the jury knew something was going on with the DNA. And then we come back and DNA is brought back up right away. And what came out of that was that there was no canine DNA found on John O'Keefe's sweatshirt. Dr. Russell says she's aware that there was no canine DNA. She also talks about how the sweatshirt was not handled properly. Like, it wasn't in, held in an evidence, sealed bag. And in fact, Trooper Proctor, I think, had it for weeks before even submitting it for that DNA testing. Also, it was on the floor of the ambulance. It was on the floor of the hospital room. So she says this sweatshirt really isn't, it isn't the right, or she says that the sweatshirt really did not have the right protocols to determine if it in fact had DNA on it, when the dog attack happened. Now, the sweatshirt did have pig DNA, so that did get brought up, but there was nothing more to that. Did John have bacon that morning, or what? It just kind of was okay, well, there was pig DNA, and that's it. So that was interesting to me. Then Brennan gets into the fact that the sweatshirt did have small pieces of glass fragments or taillight pieces in it. And he's like, it doesn't have dog DNA, but it does have pieces of the taillight in it. Can you explain that? And do you think that it could have made these marks on O'Keefe's arm? Because remember, that's what they're saying. They're saying that the Scratches on John O'Keefe's arm were from the taillight. Now, the taillight pieces were really, really small. And so she says, no, absolutely not. Like the taillight pieces are too small to have caused that kind of pattern and those large of scrapes. Then on redirect, Alessi gets back up there to talk about these plastic pieces. And, he emphasizes that some of these are as small as 1/16 of an inch. So you're talking like you barely can see these taillight pieces, right? And she says, absolutely not. There's no way that those caused those scrapes. And he says, are you sure? Like, definitively. And she says, yes, basically. And then Brennan gets up, and you guys, this back and forth with this witness was a little bit too much in my opinion, but I just want to make another point that Brennan did when he got up on, redirect. I don't know how many times, but he asks her if she has memory issues, and Dr. Russell literally gasps. She goes, huh? No, in a really funny manner. She gasps like, are you seriously asking me that? And then in the most monotone, kind of just factual, no, sir, I do not have memory issues. Did you just see that I am a doctor? Just because I just retired doesn't mean just because I just retired and have gray hair does not mean that I have memory issues. Thank you very much. That's what I'm thinking she's saying in her head. Now, finally, Dr. Russell was done. I mean, she took majority of the day, and we got really nowhere more than where we got yesterday, except for, okay, we don't have any DNA, but that was really the only extra step that we got with Dr. Russell. So next up, the defense called Sergeant Nicholas Barrows of Dighton Police Department. He is not affiliated with Canton PD or Boston PD. He was simply or is simply just a local officer that was assigned to assist Proctor when he picked up Karen Reed's SUV from Dighton on January 29th, 2022. Now listen, Barrows was called in because of jurisdiction, right? Trooper Proctor calls him and says, hey, I'm on my way to pick up an SUV in a potential homicide. And can somebody assist me over there because it's in his jurisdiction? He gets a call. He heads over there. He has no idea who Proctor is, never talked to the guy in his entire life. Obviously knows Canton PD because they're neighboring towns, but knows nobody associated with any of it. When he arrives, he says that Reed's SUV was parked in the driveway, and he noted right away damage to her rear passenger side taillight. He describes this damage as a slim crack several inches long. I'm talking he's this long, and if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, and this wide, a chunk of it missing only. He's then shown a ring video that shows Karen's SUV getting placed onto a flatbed tow truck, and they zoom in on that light and they say, is this what you're what you saw? And he says yes. And you can see in this video, you can see the taillight is pretty intact, and you can see an orange piece and red piece to that taillight. He is then shown a picture of Karen Reed's taillight from the Sally Port, the infamous picture with the taillight totally busted out. And he says that is absolutely not the taillight that he saw the morning that he picked up the vehicle, or that he assisted picking up the vehicle. Now, tell me what you guys think. I mean, I'm going to put up the pictures right now on Spotify and YouTube, and you tell me if these pictures are different, or you think that it could be the same exact placement and we're just seeing different angles? I would love to know. Another notable thing to add is that Barrows was the prosecution witness for the first trial. That's right. The prosecution called him up last time, and obviously he said the same thing he's saying now, and they did not call him back. But of course, the defense is like, hello, like star witness here. You saw the taillight. You were there, buddy. And you say it doesn't look the same? Well, you are now going to be our witness. So on cross, Brennan asked whether Barrows saw anyone touch that light, tamper with it. And he says, obviously, no, he did not see Trooper Proctor or anyone else tamper with the light at, the house that morning. He did trip Barrows up a little bit on some of the testimony that he testified to last trial. But I think Barrows still held his own. He kept pressing him on his memory issues. And if, he could have falsified his memory this time because you don't have as good a memory now as you did, a year ago. But on redirect, he was asked again, like, do you remember this taillight specifically? Yes. Do you remember that morning? Yes. Do you remember being there? Do you remember what the snow was like? Do you remember this specific day? And he was pretty certain that he remembers exactly how that taillight was. Oh, the other thing that Brennan didn't like was in his report, which he did write one, it was kind of a one-liner. He didn't put a lot of detail on the taillight, which to me is also good for the defense, because think about it. When you're going to write a report and you see like a slight piece of taillight missing from a car, you're not going to write that much about it. You're like, cracked taillight. If you see a whole taillight missing, like punched out, I think you would write a little bit more, like entire taillight missing. Looks like it's punched out. But I don't know. It's a taillight, so I didn't give too much weight on Brennan saying that he wrote a one-liner. Also, it's not his case, right? He just was assisting. So I can understand why he was like, I'm not going to write like a full journal on this one incident that I really have nothing to do with. I just am showing up. Little did he know he has a lot to do with this case. And that was it for day 26. We just had those two witnesses on the stand. And on day 27, we are getting a whole new set of witnesses. So I am looking forward to that. I will be back here tomorrow to talk about more evidence and what the defense is bringing in. So don't miss us. If you haven't followed already, just click that follow button right now so it shows up in your feed immediately tomorrow. And don't forget to leave a comment and rate and review us if you're loving us. And we'll see you tomorrow.